And welcome back, George Norrie with Michael Olson. Michael, before we take calls, a couple more questions. The Chinese Communist government is preventing its farmers and gardeners from growing vegetables. But why?
Because they need the land for grain. Okay?
Aha.
And here's the interesting dynamic in that. China knows that if it's going to launch a war, it's going to have to feed itself. And so every square inch of China is being turned into a grain-producing region, even backyard gardens. So the CCP has instituted Nonguan, which are country policemen. You remember the Dabais of the COVID era in China? These big, white, puffy-looking, spooky, ghosty characters that ran around forcing everybody to do everything.
Like the COVID patrol.
Yeah, exactly. The big whites. Now they have them out in the country enforcing this discipline of getting rid of private gardens of all kinds in order to plant grain. And so if you're a small farmer making some money growing specialty crops for a hungry city, and all of a sudden these CCP police come and say they literally tear out your crop and force you to plant grain, which only sells pennies per bushel. So they're taking something away that you can make money with and forcing you to grow something that you can't make money with.
So you had an acre of tomatoes. They rip them all out?
Absolutely. Rip it all out. And for an acre of grain, which you can't make any money on. So here's an interesting statistic. The average acre of farmland in Iowa makes $313 per acre per year. Why? Because they're growing grain. Okay? The average acre of farmland in the city limits of San Francisco, $146,000 per acre per year because they're growing specialty crops that city people want.
And afford and buy.
Yes. And so China knows that it can't go to war with Taiwan without having some way of being self-sufficient. Because once they go to war with Taiwan, the shipping lanes are going to be shut down. Torpedoes, probably.
Absolutely.
So they have to be self-sufficient in grain. I think that's a big reason that Xi Jinping told Vladimir Putin to invade the Ukraine.
Because of the grain.
It's grain, yeah.
Interesting. Let's take some calls here for you. John in Wisconsin to get us started. Welcome to the show. Hey, John.
Hello, George. Hello, Michael. I have two comments, please. Foremost, Michael, thank you for your wisdom and your clarity. I have never heard the China-United States relationship explained as well as you have. And I want to encourage the coast-to-coast listeners to tell their friends and families that don't get a chance to don't get a chance to listen to Coast to Coast. Go to the website, sign up to be an Insiders Club, and listen to Michael's wisdom tonight. It's fabulous. Second comment, Michael, I was in food service sales for 30 years, and about 10 years ago, one of our largest protein suppliers was purchased by China. At the time, I didn't think a lot of it. My colleagues didn't think a lot of it. When we kind of figured things out, we go, oh boy. So what we did, or some of us did, is we switched our customers to other protein that was American produced and owned. And I feel bad for the employees that have to work for this Chinese-owned company, but I refuse to further enrich China. Gentlemen, those are my comments. Michael, thank you for everything.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, listen, Xi Jinping's latest war cry is that every rice bowl should be filled with Chinese rice. So he is preaching to everybody that we must become self-sufficient. That's been kind of my war cry forever in advocating for local agriculture. We all should be buying local first, and in doing so can sustain ourselves. As a matter of fact, I firmly believe that we can eat our way to economic security and personal freedom. It'll be so easy, it won't cost an extra dime. It'll be so easy, it'll make you blush. It's called the 2x2 pledge. Simple as that. I pledge to buy $2 worth of local food every day, and I pledge to talk two other people into buying $2 worth of local food every day. Run those numbers, and you will see if we get everybody to buy $2 worth of local food every day, we will become wealthy enough to be financially secure and free, independent. Now, way back when Xi Jinping, when Chairman Mao, 1949, he had a country that was 85% peasants. But these weren't poor people. These were people who were making a lot of money growing specialty
right.
crops.
And hard workers, all hard workers, too.
Hard workers. So F.H. King, the United States Secretary of Agriculture, went to visit them. How the heck are you feeding so many people on so little land? He found a guy walking down the road, and the guy told him that on his one half of an acre, he feeds 20 people. And furthermore, he makes $400 a year in gold, which in today's money equals $37,000. So on a half acre, he feeds 20 people, and he makes $37,000. Holy smokes. Mao Zedong took over a country filled with these kinds of people. Now, his idea was that he was going to use these peasant farmers to drive a communist revolution. So how on earth is he going to turn these independent farmers, business people, into slaves of the state? What is he going to do? The only thing he can do is tyranny, which in essence is the cruel and excessive government rule. And boy, nobody was more cruel and more excessive than Mao Zedong.
Was he well liked and respected or not? There.
Well, you better like him.
Or you're dead.
Anybody who didn't like him was put out to lunch, gone. Kind of like it is today, if you think about it. And here's the rub about Xi Jinping. So after Mao, we had a succession of leaders who really, first was Deng Xiaoping and his reform that opened up China. Come on in, everybody's welcome. Bring your money, and you can partake in our massive marketplace. Think of the market, 5 times bigger than the United States. Boy, I can make a lot of money there. And so he was followed by Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin, and there was 40 years.
Where was Zhou Enlai with this, Michael?
Zhou was Mao Zedong's number 2.
That's what I thought.
Sometimes number 3 or number 4. He was always my favorite. I always liked Zhou Enlai.
He's the one Nixon dealt with, right?
Pardon?
He's the one that Nixon dealt with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Nixon shook hands with Chairman Mao as well. But I was studying Chinese, interesting enough, when Nixon went to China. I was studying Chinese, and the Chinese books that I was studying all came out of the Cultural Revolution. So what I did for my minor literature was I translated the poetry Mao Zedong wrote while he was on the Long March. And it was the poetry of a young socialist revolutionary. Listen to one stanza here. And this poem is called Kunlun.
That Mao Zedong wrote.
which is Kunlun is the legendary mountain, which was the place where China was born. To Kunlun, I always say, neither all your height nor all your snow is needed. Could I but draw my sword, overtopping heaven, I'd cleave you into three. One piece for Europe, one piece for America, one to keep in the East. Now a world in peace, sharing together the same warmth and cold throughout the globe. So here's the poetry of a young revolutionary. And so I'm translating this for my literature, and then I'm reading in my language books this stuff that's coming out of the Cultural Revolution, and you see where once he gained power, absolute power, he became the most ruthless murderer in the history of humankind. As a matter of fact, Mao's great leap forward was called the most disastrous man-made catastrophe in the history of humankind.
Was he worse than Stalin was in Russia?
He made Stalin look like a piker.
Wow.
And Hitler, a Boy Scout.
That bad?
Mao was...
God.
Yes. Now, we've had these wonderful, let's just get along leaders. Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin, Deng Xiaoping, of course. And now, Xi Jinping, who is in effect an emperor, he's no longer a president. He is an emperor now.
How long is he going to be there? A long time?
As long as he can. Now, he is turning his back on the West, and he's turning back to Mao Zedong. And he is following almost the same steps, and it's really frightening.
Back to the calls. Brendan in Austin, Texas now. Hey, Brendan, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, George and Michael. Thank you, all the staff and listeners to Coast to Coast. I'm glad that we have this. I don't agree with everything that's said, but hey, that's okay. But
please disagree. Please.
Yeah, it's fine. Russia is using hunger as a weapon against civilians in Ukraine and Africa, the same way as Israel is using hunger as a weapon against the civilians in Gaza. 2 million people without food or water while the world is watching without saying anything is shameful and pathetic. Anybody who commits atrocities against civilians on either side is pathetic, and I just had to say that. But yesterday we mentioned that the ozone hole is returning, and that can destroy the plants and food and the algae in the ocean that creates oxygen. And Art Bell had mentioned that people would be living in domes on the earth and cities. And in a way, this is already happening because Saudi Arabia is planning to build the 100-mile-long mirrored skyscraper megacity that's 200 meters wide. It's supposed to be the world's most livable city. Apparently, there's another one that's just being built. They bought $100 billion of land in Solano County, California. A bunch of billionaires are planning of building a mega city there that's kind of secretive. So do you think that these mega cities will continue to spread and that we'll use community to solve these problems rather than working against Mother Nature? We'll work with Mother Nature?
I'm not sure. I don't think they will. I think it'll be the haves and have-nots, Michael.
That's usually the way it ends up, right? And that was the whole aim of Chairman Mao. He was going to make equal. Everybody was going to be equal. And so the first thing he did was lopped off the head of everybody who owned property and gave their property to those who didn't have property, right?
Except his friends, of course.
All equal. And whether we're doing this for nature or not, I don't think China is thinking in terms of protecting nature. If you've seen what they have done in their rush to get rich, they have destroyed their water table, they have destroyed their farmland, Oh my goodness, it's just been a complete disaster. 40% of the farmland in China has been degraded by overuse, erosion, and pollution. 19% of the farmland is contaminated with heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium.
So what they're doing is far from brilliant, isn't it?
Well, they're making money.
Yeah, but there's more. There's more to life than making money, Michael.
To me, the overwhelming irony of what I see us having done over the past 40 years is we got rid of our industry because it was dirty, and we sent it to China
and brought it back here.
Stuff, yes, and we bought the stuff from China that was made with dirty industry, and we felt so good about ourselves because we chased that dirty industry away.
And still got the benefit.
Yes, of course. It's the ultimate hypocrisy.
Crazy times. Gary in Pennsylvania. Hey, Gary, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, George. You have a really great guest on tonight. I learned, like that one caller said, I learned more in the last hour or whatever than I learned my whole life. But I just want to say two things, and I'll ask the question for your guest. First of all, I feel sorry for the people in China. Their leadership is just, I really feel sorry for them. But the second thing I want to say is, maybe I'm just making a leap here, but it seems to me that every time there's the year of the snake, something happens over there. Like that'll be 2025, and then in 2013, that I call him President 11. He got in there, and 2001 they got the World Trade Organization, and 89 was Tiananmen Square. 77 they got rid of the four, whatever they were called, and so on and so on. But my question for your guest is, it seems like in 1983 or whatever, you said 40 years ago, with our country, with all the tension with the Soviet Union, it seems like the Reagan administration, they wanted to, sort of pivot. They didn't want China and the Soviet Union to get together. And if you had thought during the Reagan administration, if we had sent all our industry over there to the Soviet Union, they'd be bigger than ever. So plus there's the European factor. So I think they sent everything over to China, to try to, put them against each other, triangulate them. But China ran a game on us these last 40 years, and now they're doing an end round right back to Russia. And I'll hang up, and thank you for taking my call, George.
40 seconds for a response. Go ahead, Michael.
First of all, we always must distinguish between the Chinese people and the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. China is a prison. Everybody in China is in prison. There are wardens, there are guards, and there are prisoners. And over the past 40 years, there's been visitors, but they're not there anymore either. And those visitors were us. We're gone. Now it's just a prison.
Prison for sure. We're going to come back in a moment with Michael Olson. His website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. But we're going to come back and take final phone calls. Those of you on hold, just hang there. We will do our best to get you when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. Michael Olson with us, George Norrie here, and we'll get your calls. Michael, do you feel that this may be one of the worst times that we can imagine with the planet in terms of wars and fights and all this stuff?
Well, I don't know. It could have been much worse at the outset of World War II, and perhaps even World War I. What we are looking at here is a threat for China and its allies to do the same thing that happened in World War II, which is to go to war. China is armed up. It has built a huge, huge military. It has more Navy ships than we have. Now, by far, and foot soldiers, oh my goodness, it is huge. And it needs to do something, George. Xi Jinping is in trouble. His promise, the promise by which the CCP has made its living, is to provide an economy where everybody could make a living.
That's not happening.
It's gone. It's gone.
Are people blaming him? Is he being blamed for this?
Not out loud, but I'm sure inside. So the question is, what will they do? Is it possible for them to stand up to the CCP? CCP has so much control over everybody's life. It really is like a prison. It is a prison.
Crazy times.
And so Xi Jinping has to do something. Otherwise, who knows what will happen to him? We already know that there has been a revolt in the military. He's had to get rid of half of his leadership in the military because they've been rebelling against him.
Let's go back to the phones.
Get rid of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Greg in New York, east of the Rockies. Hey, Greg, go ahead.
Hello. I was wondering, I've heard rumors that China is buying up the farmland in the United States. And if that's true, that could cause problems with our own food supply.
I do believe that's true, Michael, isn't it?
Yes.
They're buying it up by the thousands of acres, aren't they?
Well, and also they're buying it up, buying farmland close to military bases, too.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there's all kinds of reasons for concern there. And see, this is part of China's unrestricted warfare. Okay? Yeah. It's just going in and taking us over. It's capturing our elite. It's capturing our universities. And they're very, very good at it. And we've been not paying any attention at all. All we've been focused on is the big money that we can make by taking part in the Chinese marketplace. Now, if you were to do some YouTube searches on the citizen, what's going on the street level of China, you would see that, gosh, it looks like San Francisco. Only they're not drugged out on fentanyl. These are hungry people, starving people.
Are
people
they
without work? People with masters and PhDs.
What's the crime like in
work.
China, Michael? What's the crime
Pardon?
like? What's the crime like?
You don't see much of it. You don't hear much of it. I suspect if you're a criminal in China, let me counter that. I heard a wonderful story about a gang of thieves who targeted the CCP upper-ups, the mucky-mucks in the CCP. And they targeted breaking into their houses. Why? Because all of the CCP upper echelon takes bribes. And what do you do when you have millions and billions and trillions of dollars worth of bribes coming your way? Where do you keep it? Well, you can't put it in a bank, so you stash it in your house. So if you're a thief, who you really want to rob are members of the CCP.
Because, they've got their cash in the house. They got all their money there.
It's like, what did Willie Sutton say about bank robbers? Well, we rob banks because that's where the money is. And that's why the gangs of thieves are targeting CCP officials, because they have cash stashed in their houses.
Let's go to Frank in Colorado, west of the Rockies. Frank, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. To preface, I'm 67 years old. I was born and raised in Los Alamos, New Mexico. But right now I live in a little cabin up in the mountains in Colorado.
Okay.
In the 70s in high school and stuff, we all truly believed that our government had our back with secret stuff that nobody knew about because of where we lived. We also, at that time, had a lot of people in our hometown that were of suspicion of Chinese people, and they were scared of just the Chinese lying culture and their relationship with America. And your guest right now, he's explained it so well, and I just don't know enough about it. But I don't know, subterfuge is the right word, but just the whole deal about how they are owning American property, the students in the universities, the businesses owned by Chinese people. There is no economy in China for them to make a living. Those poor people, I feel terrible for all human beings because I don't believe in throwaway people. But Chinese government does throw their people away, and America has been helping that so much in the last 40 years, especially the last 20 years. We really have to look at all American people's business relations with China and their relations with our people, and we just got to start taking a hard, long look at this thing before the military-industrial complex allows China to dominate worldwide.
When is it too late, Michael?
When it's too late, it's too late. And you never know when that's going to be. But what we do know is that your caller was right. The CCP has essentially taken over broad swaths of American culture, society, business, politics, education, entertainment. It owns so much of us that they are in a position, they're working in that position so they can wear us down and that we just give up without a fight. That's the purpose of unrestricted warfare, to win the battle without having to fire a shot. And that's what they have been working on for 40 years.
How would you counteract it? What would you do?
What would I first thing? I'd stop buying made in China. And I would look at the people who have been purchased by China, our elite, who control our media, who control our financial system, who control Washington, D.C. They have to be let go.
Let's go to Rebecca now in Austin, Texas. Hey, Rebecca, go ahead.
I'd like to talk about panda politics.
Panda politics.
Yes, and George, just in a few weeks, China is taking back and removing all the pandas from all of our zoos. And why? What's going on? I can't imagine not being able to go to San Diego or the National Zoo and seeing the pandas.
We're giving them the pandas. We're giving them away.
They're taking them back. They're removing them.
They are. They are on loan.
The pandas.
Go
ahead, Marshall. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, the pandas are on loan from the CCP. Okay, as a gesture of good faith, we're going to lend you our pandas.
We're going to lend them. We're going to lend them our pandas.
Oh, that's what they did. They lent us their pandas.
Who lent who? I'm confused.
Well, the CCP lent the United States its pandas.
Over the years?
As a gesture of good faith, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you remember how we fell in love with those pandas and how they were seen as a breakthrough in this loggerhead we've had with China. We looked at the pandas and we thought, oh, life is good. We love the pandas. We love China. And let's give them all our money.
And now they're getting them all back?
Happened.
They're getting them back now?
Well, now that they have our money, they want their pandas back, right?
Let's go back to Rebecca in Austin, Texas. Rebecca, I guess that's what's happening.
Oh, it's a shame because we actually, especially San Diego, they did all the research on how to save the panda because they weren't doing it over in China. We taught them, all the artificial insemination tactics. And I saw the first two pandas that came to Washington, D.C., and I fell in love with them instantly because they would take their paws and grab their feet and rock on their bottoms. And it was just so precious. And the same thing, I saw the first San Diego panda that was born. Mm-hmm. And same thing. You just
what an excellent example. What an excellent example of how effective China's unrestricted warfare has been. We looked at those pandas and we just fell in love with them, and we just gave China anything it wanted.
Now, how many pandas are we shipping back there?
All of them, I think.
What are we talking about, hundreds?
I don't think it's hundreds, no. I have no idea. But they're a very effective use of manipulating public opinion. They are so good at it. I sometimes think that the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is playing three-dimensional chess in the dark while we're playing checkers in the sunlight.
And they're better chess players than we are checker players, that's for sure. Let's go to Glenn in Alberta, Canada. Real quick, Glenn, go ahead.
Hey, George. Yeah, everything he's saying, that sounds more like the World Economic Forum to me. They've got a war on Western countries' nitrogen, so our farmers can't farm. All the taxes, the carbon taxes. It's a war. We've got to look inside, not China. You know, the corruption, it's not just China. You got to look at the World Economic Forum.
Amen. You hit it right on the head. When Mao Zedong and the CCP took over China in 1949, 85% of the country were independent farmer business people making a good living, providing food. And what Chairman Mao and the CCP did was they had to get rid of them, or they had to turn those independent farmers into slaves of the state. And the only way they could do it was with tyranny, by food, taking their food away and turning them into slaves. The same thing Joseph Stalin did with the Ukrainians in the Great Holodomor.
Well said, Michael. Well said. Michael Olson's website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Up next, Dr. Kimberly McGeorge joins us, the psychic medium.